Everyone to this Google Digital Garage training session on Build Engaging Presentation. My name is Francois and I'm a trainer for this Google Free Skills program at Google Digital Garage. Just a bit about myself. First of all, I'm an experienced IT consultant and trainer, as well as having a background in online collaboration and digital marketing. I worked with large corporation, small and medium business in Europe, US, and the UK for the past 20 years already. So I love to share what I've learned. I also would like to introduce with you today our moderator, who is Sarah. You will find her in the chat and she can interact with you. If you want to take part of the instant chat, it's going to be on the right-hand side of your YouTube, but for that, you may have to be logged in. So please make sure that you have a YouTube account. If you are having trouble viewing this webinar right now, just refresh your browser and you should come back to normal. We are going to also have some pauses during the session. So please feel free to fire away all your questions and we will take them at the break dedicated for questions. So that I'll let you know as well, we are running this Google Digital Garage virtual training as part of a broader offering of courses. We have lots of courses going on all around. You can find our upcoming webinar training with the information below this video, below this live YouTube live, and also through the website. I'm sure Sarah is going to post lots of links as I speak, so you can interact with her and with me as well. So now that we have done a bit of housekeeping and presentation, let's get started with our Build Engaging presentation today. So today, at the end of this session, you should be able to craft your approach to presentation. So it means that you will be more familiar with the use of presentation to achieve your desired effect, what you want to convey to your audience. You're going to know how to create your presentation from scratch, know and remember all the basic skills that you need to present to be in front of an audience and to really captivate their attention. And of course, you're going to feel a bit more confident and present effectively. We have quite a lot of slides to go through today, so some of them may feel a little bit fast, but bear in mind that this YouTube live is going to be accessible for the next 24 hours, so you can come back to exactly the same address and watch it again and again. So one of the things we can also inform you is that we have free career certificate available from Google. So if you just go to this address, google/careercert UK, or anybody who is UK based will be able to have free scholarship through our selected partner. You can sign up, it's all free, and have your certificate for career. All right, presentation. What is the most memorable presentation you have experienced? So this is a question we are going to put to you, all of you watching in the chat. If you can think of what is the most memorable presentation. So maybe it was a teacher that you had at university, at school. Maybe it was even a presentation just on a whiteboard, something that really has stayed in your memory. And why is that? So if you can participate in the chat and tell us a little bit, what has really triggered your memory? Going to use this in the next few slides to understand why it actually stayed in your memory. So let's think now about why do we need to present? When we have something to present, it's because we want the person to do two things. And we want them to either think about what you're presenting. We want them you have to speak and write as well. So how do we convey this emotion and all the subject, the topic that we want to give to our audience? So you can move the mind of others. The presentation is really powerful, but you need to find out why do we want to present? Do we want to inform? Do we want to inspire, instruct? Is this a presentation to entertain? Is this one to persuade? There are different types of presentation. We're going to try to list them and see which one is appropriate for your need. Let's see the next slide. I'm going to play a video and I will ask you actually what is the type of presentation in this video. So let's play this, and as always, I will ask you to move to make your volume quite high because we have sound in this video, and I'll speak to you in a few seconds.
What you're doing right now at this very moment is killing you. More than cars or the internet, or even that little mobile device we keep talking about, the technology you're using the most almost every day is this, your tush. Nowadays, people are sitting 9.3 hours a day, which is more than we're sleeping at 7.7 hours. Sitting is so incredibly prevalent, we don't even question how much we're doing it. And because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't even occur to us that it's not okay. So instead of going to coffee meetings or fluorescent lit conference room meetings, I ask people to go on a walking meeting to the tune of 20 to 30 miles a week.
Okay, see the video, it's a little bit lagging. I'm going to try to rewind it. Strangely, it was fine until now.
A week.
Here we go.
It's changed my life. You'll be surprised at how fresh air drives fresh thinking. And in the way that you do, you'll bring into your life an entirely new set of ideas. Thank you.
Okay, for some of you, you may have recognized the type of presentation. This is taken from a TED Talk, and we have Nilofer Merchant, is written on the top here, who is presenting onto a specific topic. So we're going to understand what she's actually highlighting here, and the kind of type of presentation. So you may have put already in the chat, what are the type of presentation of this one? It sounds that it's about convincing, about something like trying to convey a message and trying to convince an audience about something. But what is she really doing? She's not just presenting. She's just actually telling a story. And I like to say the just because it sounds really simple, but most presentation, they are not going to be just telling a topic in a monotonous tone. It is really about making a story and bringing the story to life. So story, if we think about how a story is being told, maybe a book, maybe an essay, a story will always have a beginning, where you're going to set up the presentation, what's happening, and then you have a middle where you go through the journey of discovery, you're going to explain the heat of the action maybe, and finally you have the ending, where we are going to put everything together, all the thoughts that we have said before, and we give the final insight of this story. Well, presentation is very similar to this. And in addition, we're going to look at the types, as I said, of story. So some of the types we like to show is 4 different ones. We have origin, where we talk about the very beginning. So maybe we have created our business, like this example, in a garage, and now, where we are now, we are in 30 countries in the world. But you talk about the very origin, like me and my brother started in a garage with a very bad laptop. The second one is future vision. So this is where we are now, but we are talking about the future. In the future, we're gonna be into 30 countries worldwide. Failure of success. So something that really happened in the past, we came to fail, we came to have an amazing success, and this is how we came out of it. And finally, the realization. So think of realization of, like this example, been working for 15 years in an industry, when suddenly I had a realization that things could be better, and that's how I created my product or my service. Let's go back to this video that we just saw now. What type was it? And if you think about it, is if she was talking about a story, and then she said, like, and suddenly I realized that. And the whole point was, I realized that We just have to move, and maybe we can do meetings, standing and walking meetings. So let's look at these story types now. The story types, we looked at the 4 different types, but they are appropriate depending on the typical presentation. So you may be thinking, oh, well, I don't really know, I have a budget report and it sounds really serious and it's going to have lots of numbers and lots of financial report number. Well, you could use a success or failure, because numbers are going to turn things around and prove to the audience that things can be possible. Company update, for instance, you could use it as the origin story, because we are talking about the beginning and then where we are going. If we are doing idea pitch, maybe we can use a vision story. So realization story would be a good one, so that we know, again, we have a goal and where we are going with this. Goal, I just mentioned it. What is the goal? Goal is super important in presentation. And the goal of this TED Talk that you just saw, it was very clear by the very middle of the story. It was about walking to meeting. It was trying to bring people attention into doing something new, having a different approach to meetings. So your goal for your own presentation has to be very clear as well, so that you know what you want from your audience. What do we want them to think? What do we want them to do at the end? So when we are presenting, when we are telling the story, they are thinking about something. Maybe they're thinking that this presenter is just making some jokes and I don't really understand it. But maybe that's the aim of the presentation. It could be that we are trying to make them react. So thinking is always putting yourself in the shoe of your audience. And what do we want them to think? What do we want them to feel? As I said, they may be amused by the presenter. They may be saddened by the story. It's all about feeling. And if we have feeling, we can have empathy with the presenter as well. So the audience is going to be really catchy and getting excited what they're doing, what they're talking about. What's the one thing we want them to take away? So let's say today we are doing a presentation on presentation skills. What is the one thing we would like you to take away? Well, maybe we want you to take away that there are different styles of presenting. Maybe that you can actually achieve a presentation skills and you don't need to be born with it. We'll talk about this in a bit later in this presentation. What is the very one thing we want your audience to take away? So think about it when you are preparing as well. Back to the TED Talk. What is the one thing that the presenter wanted the audience to take away? So yes, she talked about meeting, stand-up meeting, walking meeting. Maybe it was just the one thing was to be more active in the day-to-day lives. That was the one thing that she wanted people to take away with. So what is the structure now of our story? So we know that a story is usually the introduction and the middle and the conclusion. So we have it here. We have a background. We talk about the scenery. We try to explain where they are in the story. What is the context? And then we have a problem. We are confronted to an issue. Maybe we need to solve something. So we present the solution. And then finally, we go with conclusion. But another structure could be that we talk about the research. We've been researching for some solution, identify what are the relevant points, and then we plan for our story, our structure. We plan for the provocative statement, maybe the story, the little anecdotes that we have, the little example that we have in the presentation. And finally, we're going to design it. So design, it means that maybe we want to have a support like we have today. We have some slides, so it makes it a little bit more entertaining as well for the person who is not just listening, but watching what we are doing. So we need to go ahead and start planning all this, because we are telling a story, but we are telling a story for a special audience and not just anybody. It's a very specific need that we are or target that we are showing the presentation. So if there is one little homework that I would like you to think about in the next few days is to take a few minutes and think about presenting. So maybe we want to start practicing a story. So we're going to present a story to someone, and you could present it to a member of your family, a member of your household, maybe even a pet. If you don't even have a pet, just think about recording it to yourself. You will record it, watch it again, and then you will improve for sure, because that's a method that is successful. Think about a story a type of story that you could tell. So the origin, future, the success, failure, maybe the realization, and then come up with this little story following this story, situation, and realization and conclusion you have. So now we're going to arrive to the questions. I believe there isn't any question, but I like to see if there is any reaction. Look at this. Earlier, we asked you some question, and I went really fast because I thought the question didn't arrive. Thank you, Sarah, for participating as well. We had a really great, memorable presentation. So Dr. Berg on YouTube, who is giving health advice. Oh yes, I've seen this one, using a blackboard. So nothing digital, blackboard. And then his presentation are very short, straight to the point, uses bullet points because it's straight. Well, as I repeat point a lot, you can imagine where I'm going. It's straight to the point, and therefore they stay in memory. So we're going to move on from the questions, but what we have is that we have another 2 breaks, I believe, so we can take questions later and in the end, so that we all finish on time as well. So let's look now at how to build the effective presentation. So in the next section, we're going to explore the tools this time. So the tools that you can use to tell your story in an effective way. So choosing the tool depends actually on the audience and the message you are trying to convey. Because the tools and technology, they are everywhere nowadays, right? You can just go on Google, any search engine, and just type presentation tools. You will have dozens, and it's quite hard to select which one is better than the other one. The minimum they will do is to present a slide, of course. But the last part on the right, as you can see, it depends on what is available. It does happen that sometimes myself and Sarah, we go to some venues and actually there's no Wi-Fi. Maybe there is the screen, the projector screen, but suddenly this day the projector doesn't work. So we have to quickly switch to a backup plan, and maybe we have to use a blackboard or a whiteboard. So it's good to have a little bit of a practice and really decide and know in advance what is the audience to have the best presentation tool available. So to slide or not to slide, I was explaining that sometimes you may not have the choice depending on the venue. You may be in a venue that technology is not there, not available. I mean, we don't really want to have a power surge, but it may happen as well. You know, plan B is quite key. It's good to think about it. What do I do if I don't have any technology? Can I still present by myself? Can I actually get rid of a microphone and just talk loud in a room? So the choice of slide or not slide really depends on what you're going to do with your audience and the room. But if we are in a digital environment and we know we can use it, some of the tools that you could use is there's 3 that we are listing. These ones are really good for interacting. So that's why they are called aids. We are talking to the audience, and as we are presenting on slides, they can actually interact with us. They can draw on the same screen as you. They can chat with you in real time, and maybe they can vote for the next questions. So Slido is a really famous one, so that you can really have the audience participating on their mobile phone and just answer your question, ask question directly. so you can get statistics. And it's fantastic when you have the right technology, you have tested it before, be careful to make sure it's tested so that it doesn't fail. It's fantastic to see that on screen because people will actually see the result of the audience vote and not just their own. So whatever tool you choose, make sure that you really practice, and it's going to work well at the end of the day. Too often, I have friends and family calling me and saying, like, "Oh, I want to do an interactive presentation. Can you quickly guide me using one of these tools?" Except that it's an hour before the presentation. So make sure that you do that a lot before and you practice with friends as well. All right, so now choosing the tool to do this this presentation. We have many presentation tools online and also offline, as I said. So choosing the presentation tool is going to be depending on your need and maybe your environment, your license. Do you have the right to connect to some platforms, some organization? We not let certain URLs, certain address in the browser being passed through their security. So you have to make sure that everything works before you go on site and be ready to present. It happens a lot as well that we have everything on our computer, and when we are in the room, we can't even use the computer because we have to use the corporate environment, and the corporate means we use the computer that is already connected. So think about all these things. Ask the person who is inviting you, who has organized the room booking, to make sure which tool is allowed. Tools. We are going to talk about Google Slides, but we could use PowerPoint from Microsoft. We could use Prezi, which is a really fun tool, more like a 3D presentation tool. We could use the equivalent with Apple as well, which is Apple Keynotes. And there are so many that you could continue and play on your own time, like Canva that Sarah has also posted, and all the other online tools. Why do we talk about Google Slide? Of course we're Google, but just because the minimum that Google Slide does is also going to be the minimum that the other tools do. So for instance, here I'm presenting this screen in full screen mode. I'm sharing the screen to everybody in my virtual meeting. It is the minimum that Google Slide will do. So let's talk about this tool. Google Slide is really good to work with others on the same presentation. So it means that as I was preparing this presentation today, maybe I was actually having a colleague maintaining it, updating it exactly in real time. So I will see the little cursor. You can see that Susan is moving the cursor, and then Ali is taking over and fixing the typo, fixing the grammar. It's a really great tool for online collaboration, and it's just online, nothing to install, very simple. Everything we do in Google Slides is backed up automatically, so you don't really have any risk to lose it, and you can access it anywhere as long as you are online, so anywhere you have internet. When you're in Google Slides, you can have this feature called theme. Why do we use a theme? A theme is like a color interface. It's a presentation theme that everybody in every slide in this presentation will be able to have. And that's great because it makes this presentation a little bit more standard. So it does mean that I'm not going to start the first slide with a really big text and then switch to the other one, and the text is not the same font, not the same color, not the same style. Everything will just follow the same theme. So theme is really something that you can, we would definitely promote as using and making it your own. So you can create a custom theme, and I'm going to show you very quickly how you might do that. Why am I YouTube very slow today? It must be because we are too many watching this presentation. All right, I'm going to rewind again. That's really odd. Otherwise, we'll just move on because this is only a few clicks that we have. Here we go on Google Slides. So as you can see, there's no sound. It's me talking, and we just go into Slide, Edit Master. Now we are editing the theme master of all our slides. It doesn't touch the slides, it only touches the colors, the font, etc. And so we will add some placeholder, maybe like this title. This title we decide that is quite large. And now all the slides are taking the same theme. It's a very short video. I don't think it shows the full power of Google Slides, but it's a good introduction to understand how we could use theme. And when you are in Google Slides, you have the same navigation on the top, which is lots of buttons, lots of tools, and they are not actually too overwhelming compared to some presentation products, because they are trying to be very minimalist into what do you need to do. So for instance, the first section here, as you can see, is going to be about printing undo, but the second one over there is about adding a text box image shape. So anything that is adding content will be these little tools, these little buttons or icons. And then if we want to change the background, the layout, the theme, it will be all the second part here. And finally, what I did today is that I click on present, and then you can all see it in full screen. So it's very simple, in fact. In just a few clicks, we can prepare our presentation and present this. However, if you're new to Google Slides and it's the first time you see this kind of screen, please practice. Make sure that your tools are learned in advance, just because during your presentation, you won't have to modify it, so you don't use this, but you will have to use that one. And there's a little drop down where you can have more options. So practice before you present. Making presentation that sticks. So now let's talk about the content. So it's quite interesting that a presentation, we know how to convey a message now. We're going to talk about story. We have chosen maybe a tool. So we have chosen Google Slide or PowerPoint. That's great. But a lot of people just go straight into the presentation and they haven't thought yet about the content. So the title, what are they going to put in the slide, etc. Making presentation that sticks is super important. But do we need a big title? Do we need a small, a big title? Yes, lots of text, lots of words. Or do we need less words and images, for instance? So of course, you guessed it, on the right-hand side is much better. Little text as possible is really the best practice, because people may read. I'm not saying they don't read. A lot of people love to read. But it means that if they read, they don't look at you, they don't listen to you, because they're busy doing something. So what we recommend is to have a small text so they can focus on what you are saying. So let's be considerate as well in the number of slides. So there is no magic number. We can't really say the magic number is that number of slide maximum or minimum, to be honest. It's more a rule of thumb. So let's say you have a 60-minute presentation. You wouldn't like to go over the 60 slides. So 1 slide per minute, because otherwise it's quite distracting to see lots of slides moving very fast. Of course, it's not always true, because there are other methods of presenting. For instance, there is a Japanese presentation skill that is called Pechakucha. And this one is 20 slides in 1 minute, so really fast pace. So depending on your audience again, you may choose how many number of slides. But in general, for a business professional presentation, we would say 1 minute, 1 slide. Keep your bullet points very concise. So you can see within this one, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 5 bullet points, if you think about it, because they are in red, they're just bullets. Very concise, and then the rest, I can just talk over it. I can just talk on top of it. So next one is the font, right? Don't make it too small, don't make it too big either. And then vary the content. So it means that sometimes you have text, sometimes you have image, sometimes you have both. It really depends. You saw as well in our presentation that we even have videos. So you vary the content, because then it becomes not as, let's say, boring, to be honest, than a presentation that just has lots of different things. Thank you, Sarah, for sending the link to Pechakucha. It's a really fun presentation that we like to experience with. If you have the opportunity, it's really fun. And as I said, the last point as well, change the pace. So same for the content. If you have a video, you have a text, you just change the content, but also your pace. Sometimes you may go very low because you want the audience to be kind of like curious about what you're going to say, your next point. And then suddenly you like, and boom, something explodes in your speak, and the audience is kind of awakened. When we are in online presentation, we need to share the screen. That's a very must do. And to do that, we need to practice. This morning, I was sharing this screen, and then there was a bit of black on the top, at the bottom. Things needs to be adjusted. Make sure that you have practiced before, you know how to adjust your screen, and you don't panic at the last minute. Video, do we decide that our participant can all enable the videos? So it means when I'm talking, when I'm presenting, I can share my screen, but at the same time, I may have another screen showing all the videos. And I'm really saying another screen. It might be better to have two screens if you do online presentation. This is what most of us use when we present on YouTube as well. Do we want a live audience participation? So do we want the chat? Do we want to go into tools like Slido? All of this needs to be thought before you start the day of your presentation. But of course, easy of use and cost effective. Do we have to pay for license to present this? Are we using a paid online streaming service? Easy of use for you, but also for your audience. You don't want to have a very archaic screen sharing experience so that your participants don't really know how to use the chat, don't really know how to interact. And this is the time again for questions. I think it's been very quiet today. Thank you for watching in silence. But if you have any questions, again, we are here until for the next half hour, I believe. So we are going to be entertaining you. Posing for questions. I can see nothing is coming up. All right. How do we now boost our presentation skills? So it means that you have the tools, you have your story, and you want to be a good presenter, right? So boosting presentation skill, it means that you should have a great presentation so that you can offer your structure, your traditional slide maybe, but you want to have your corporate slide and not really entertaining because the colors may be the one that you have been forced to use by the company. However, you are unique, and therefore you can use your own voice, your own expression, your own gesture, so that people will remember you. And if they remember you, they remember your message. Just like the TED Talk we saw before, I'm sure everybody is remembering that the keyword was also, what's important is the touche, your touche. So what kind of presenter are you? Or what kind of presenter will you be? You might be a presenter now and you find yourself not so convincing because you have rehearsed with friends, you have rehearsed with your housemates, you recorded yourself and you're like, something is missing. What can I change? How can I make my delivery skill a little bit more punchy? So remember that from the beginning, we were asking you what are the best presentation you saw, and possibly it makes you think of the opposite. What were the worst presentation you may have seen in your life? And what is the difference between the two is the person who is talking. It's not so much about the slides that are being shown. Of course, slides may have an effect and a negative effect, but it's really about the person presenting. How well do they stay? What did they do? Are they impactful? Do they have an accent that is entertaining or really annoying? Either way, it will stay in your memory. So it's all about people as always. So it does mean that we, as the speaker, we may have to adapt to our audience. And adapting to an audience may be really hard if we don't know this audience. And of course, you may tell me, well, but I'm just sitting in a room and I'm watching a presentation. The presenter is never going to know who I am. But the presenter could have some tips to do and tricks to try to get the audience, so that we can turn the crowd of unknown people into a real conversation, like a real life conversation. So especially depending on the numbers, of course, if numbers are very high, how do we make this conversation? Well, maybe by using the tools that we mentioned earlier. If the room is smaller, then we may be able to interact directly with the crowd. So how do we do to interact with, and is it good to interact with the audience, to have their participation? So when we have an audience participating, we have a large group, we could actually ask them to show of hands. So by having some fun at the beginning, we could even ask them like, we are showing some business numbers, and before that, we know that there is a little bit of war between departments. So we're gonna tell them like, how many people in this room were watching Game of Thrones a few years ago? And maybe we're gonna do some music band survey to see who is really into Beyonce and who is really into another one. If we have a medium groups, how can we interact with them? We may just question them directly. So we're going to ask a show of hands as well. And then once we have the person asking the question or answering our question, we try to get the names and remember. So we can always refer to like Mike at the back, please. Maybe we have very large mid group. So mid group is under 50, I would say. We could actually split them into subgroups. So maybe by affinity, maybe by pairs. So they can just talk to the one next to them and have a little bit of exercise that we are presenting on screen. And then we explain the exercise. They split for a few minutes. They come back to listening to us. And we could request the conclusion of the exercise, so their answers. How do we do if we have one-to-one now? If we have one-to-one groups, it means that we have a group where we can actually really interact individually, because we may have a group of like 10 people. It's all about conversation. So we could ask them to carry this little exercise again, have some workshop, and maybe we can just have the conversation like an open panel with everyone. Virtual presentation. How do we do for having an online presentation? Can we enable the chat? We talked about the tools, making sure that we know how to use it, and enable chat. There's nothing worse than the presenter of an online discussion saying, now you can all chat in the chat box, except that participants cannot chat between them. They can only chat with the speaker. So the speaker has to do all the activity of answering the question one by one. If you make them all talk together, it would be much easier. But that's a question for you to ask before you enable all these tools. And then ask question. Make sure that the audience is being interacted with. So they will have questions where they have to reflect, maybe something that they have done before. It's like, how is you in your own work, in your own business, how do you do this and this activity? So we can ask them questions, but again, use a tool to interact and maybe to answer. And make sure that we don't talk at them non-stop. So what I'm doing now is kind of a monologue because I don't have the direct response. However, we have a chat. So we have a chat, and it's not a bot, it's a real person, Sarah, who is answering the questions and the chat. So we can actually have this interactivity. And that's really great. So I'm actually talking to you, but I could point at some people in the chat and say like, welcome to Mike from London, and thank you for your question. And I can see you are in a small business selling some chocolate in the store. So we're going to talk about how to present your products to your customers. Listening to them is really important. We need to make sure that the audience, the individual, is being heard, and we are active listening. So it's not about just taking the questions and just moving away from it. It's acknowledging that we are hearing the question and we are going to answer it. We could answer it right now. We could answer it at the end because we have a flow. We have a few minutes to go and we need to continue the presentation. Or it could be that we don't have the answer. So be very honest about this. Do not make up the answer when you have questions, because the audience will feel it. They will see it in your body language. And nowadays, they can just Google it very quickly on their mobile phone. So don't make up any answer. So we talked about having our story and how to build a story. However, if we have too much content, it can be really overwhelming for everyone, and it may destroy your presentation. So short presentation can show consideration to your audience, because your audience is really taking time to attend your presentation. So don't just stick some content because you have an hour to go, because they gave you a slot for 2 hours. Just make sure that you have what is necessary for the audience. So it has to be the value. Tailor the content to the audience, to your people in the room. It doesn't mean that 5 minutes before you enter the room, someone is telling you that the audience has changed and now they're all directors. You need to quickly change your slide. But it's more about the audience before you came to the venue. So it's about knowing if you are in a conference that is specialized into marketing, or are you in a different conference that is specialized into food and wine. You will tailor your content for the food and wine so that you can talk to them better. If you are in a room and you know that it's the convention of plumbing business, of course you're going to talk about pipes and water and leaks. Even though we are talking about digital marketing, you will use special keywords so that the audience can reflect to it. And then focus. So have 3 key verbal points prepared per slide. So every slide, it's a coincidence almost that there is 3 here, but you saw my previous slide, it's usually 2, 3, 4, around a maximum like this, so that the audience reads and it goes into their memory quite easily and their understanding. Remember that most of the things you're going to say, if they don't take notes, they will forget. So it has to be very concise, and think again about the final key message that they need to have. And pause. Take a breath before each slide, and even before each point. You can see that I'm actually pausing between number 2 and number 3, just because they may not be really linked together. We talked about focus, then we talked about pause. There isn't a direct link, so we can actually say like, all right, I'm going to pause. And the best tool to pause is to have a sip, so that the audience is actually captivated by the silence. It makes them think, it makes them ask questions if they of what you just talked about. Your voice is a powerful tool. We all have different voice. I have a very specific voice that I don't like it. Don't worry, it's very normal. I think it's like 95% of people do not like their own voice. So your voice, however, is a powerful tool. So how to use a voice that you may not be comfortable with it? Well, you know that there's something you can tailor. You can tailor your volume, the way that you speak, how loud you speak, and how quiet you speak. So you could speak very quietly mid-sentence to get the room to focus back on what you're saying. Because if I speak very low, then there's no other choice than just to bring the ear to attention. And then suddenly you can again increase the volume to make the point, to say volume is the really important key to use, or key tool to use. The style, of course. Style, I will have a different style from my colleague presenter at Google Digital Garage. We all have different style. We may have been trained in the same content, but the style is unique to the person, which is great. That's what makes us so special. Use your tone very consciously. You know that you have a tone of voice. You know that you may be you may have like a different using your voice, and your tone is different. Don't use the same tone, because if it's just monotonous tone, the audience will just disconnect naturally. And the pace, maintain a steady pace, and remember to pause. So it does mean that one thing we do a lot, including myself, is to go very, very fast at the beginning of a presentation. And then in mid-presentation, we're like, okay, now I feel a bit more relaxed. So I'm going to slow down a bit because I know I have to fill this hour. That's okay mid-presentation, but it would have been really good to slow down or to have the same pace from the beginning of the presentation, so that the audience, again, is not too terrified or too annoyed and maybe is starting to lose credibility on what you were saying. Body language. Body language is even online. You can see that I move a lot with my hands, and I try to not be just still. We all have a body language. Body language starts from the gesture. It starts from the stance, so how I'm presenting myself even though I'm sitting. And also the facial expression. Facial expression is all part of body language. You will meet some experts who are trying to read through anything on your face. So we can express our emotion through body language. The same way that if we want to express something really happy and really exuberant, we're going to have a big smile and we're going to be, and not too fake, right? We're going to be really empowering our presentation, our talk. We are going to say something really amazing about announcement to our employees. It has to be something happy. However, if we are in a negative moment, we need to show that the time is very serious. We can also show a bit of sadness. Are we nervous or confident? People are going to read into this. So make sure that before the presentation, you actually are really into it. You are into the right mood, so that your audience will see only positiveness, and they will therefore trust and be confident into what you are presenting. Of course, honest, not honest, untrustworthy is super important. We don't want the audience to find that you are not true to what you are showing or selling or presenting. You need to be honest on yourself. It does mean that if you are not doing eye contact, if you are not being straight, like eye level like this, and your head is very much down, you are not going to convey this honesty. So make sure that you are on a eye level with people, and you look at them through the camera, because then they will look at you as well. Even though we are distant, it really works. If we are in the same room, I would definitely do eye contact to everyone, same thing, and convey the message that is the true one you want to pass. Power pose. So of course, we are online. It's a bit difficult to do that, but imagine that you are going to have what we call the power pose before presenting. So are you a Wonder Woman? Are you a performer? Are you the one who is like extremely proud of being on stage and super happy? Or are you a bit embarrassed and you're kind of like, oh, it's my first time presenting online, presenting on stage, and I'm really panicky? You will show it. People will see it in your posture. So if you're all internal to yourself, they will see it, and it doesn't reflect. It's going to be straight away like, oh, that's a little bit boring. So one assignment I will give you is to take 2 minutes after this presentation and just try the power pose. Just try to be like extremely proud of what you are presenting, because you love the product, you love the services, maybe you love your company for whom you're working for, and you're really happy to present on their behalf. So be mindful of all this. The stance, which is adopting your powerful pose. It doesn't have to be a power pose. It can just be someone who is, I wouldn't use body language cross like this, because a lot of people may read into this, but at least it affirms that you own the product, the subject. Present with energy, enthusiasm, and excitement. So that's what we call the 3 E's: energy, enthusiasm, excitement. Be there, be present. And then movement, gesture naturally. So don't just bump everywhere because you think you have to move and someone told you that you need to move on stage, because it would be quite unstable for the audience as well if it doesn't come as natural and truthful. Connecting, make sure that you do eye contact, but don't just do eye contact on the same person, because this person will feel that they are a little bit in the middle of your target. So just change person depending on what they want to do. Don't stare at them. Don't make them uncomfortable. And of course, once you have your method, practice. You practice, make sure that you really own all the tools, and your body language is going to be constant, the same. The way you speak is going to be the same. You're not going to have suddenly a very high pitch and a very low pitch at the middle of a slide. That doesn't have to. Think of role model. I'm not going to say role model politician. I'm going to say role model comedians, for instance. Comedian, they are very funny on stage, right? But it's not because of what they say. It's because how they say it. They have a way of saying it. They have a gesture. They have a body language that maybe is reflecting into you, and you find this hilarious. Why? Because they practice. They planned it a lot. A lot of them have coaches. They have training every day, and they practice and rehearse a lot. Politicians, they have a very clear goal, and they were not really sure how to convey it. So they practice. They got a training, they got a teacher, and they practice a lot in front of an audience and in front of empty auditorium a lot. Magician as well, right? They practice. They are not magic. They create illusion by actually having a lot of planned set action. So they have everything is scheduled to the second. And if they miss something, then it may fail because they're magician. So make sure that you adapt to your audience. You think about your voice, what voice you want to convey. You think about your body language. So making sure that you're not, again, too close to yourself, but you really open up and you open up to your audience. Use your hand if you are online. I don't always do this in purpose, but there's a very simple way to make sure that you make an impact on a special slide. If you say like, think about your body language, and I'm bringing my hand to the camera, it's very clear to people that this thing must be quite important because the speaker is speaking. And practice, practice, practice. We are normally going to take some questions, and I believe we have a few minutes. We may even finish right before the time today. So I cannot see any questions coming up from various countries where you're watching today. We are going to the next step because I'm sure you want to know. We have done the presentation story. We know the types of presentation we may be using. We know the style. We have our personal style, our tone, our stance, body language. We have so many things that we will have to prepare, right? But things that we have to just own and be ourselves, be honest on stage. So we have done our presentation, prepared it into a tool like Google Slide. So what's next? So within Google Digital Garage, we always invite you to take your next step into improving and learning more. So it means that we invite you to go again to the Google Digital Garage. It's really full of training that are free, available. And especially at the moment, you can do your free career certificate by going to Google. So it's goo.gle/career cert UK. And anybody in the UK based will be able to improve their job ready skills. So it means free Google Career Certificate courses. You will be able to make use of this free resource, working at your own pace and stand out for future employers. Like I said, next step is really about going to Digital Garage and finding all these courses. And for the purpose of this presentation that we did today, please send your feedback by going to this address, which has just popped up on the screen on the chat, and finding us on social media with the hashtag Digital Garage. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm just going to wish you a great end of day and find you in a different presentation.